Welcome to HoopSpeak Live's 50th show. Woo! Yay! Thank you. Hold your applause. Zach Harper with me, along with Ethan Sherwood-Strauss from the SS Oakland. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty well. Exactly. A lot of great Eastern Conference basketball on TV. I'm loving it. Life is good.
Yeah, the Eastern Conference will not go away, basketball. And we've still got a few more days till the Western Conference Final starts, which is going to be a great series. But let's hop right to our bacon, because the big news of the day is that the NBA has released the All-NBA teams. And while this is, important career accolades, it now actually has a real impact on how much people get paid. The Oklahoma City Thunder were saved about $15 million by Russell Westbrook not being first-team All-NBA. Royce Young tweeted that out, and that's like a crazy nugget because he was actually good enough to legitimately be voted in there. It's just his reputation doesn't allow it. You look at his statistical profile, it was pretty much just like Kobe's, except for he was a little better. But there were some really curious additions to this team. Carmelo Anthony, third team. Blake Griffin, second team. And Rondo, third team, excuse me. Of those three, which one was the least deserving, and who would you have liked to see replace them?
I'll go first. I'm good with Blake making any of the three teams. Obviously, first and second team is kind of a stretch, but if you wanted to put him on the third team, I'm not going to really have any qualms with that. I'm good with Rondo on the third team. I think he had a really excellent season. I think he impacts his team pretty well and leads a team that's really not that good. They don't have a lot of talent. It's a pretty ragtag bunch. The problem is Melo, and I'm a huge Melo supporter. I feel like I'm one of the only guys in the blogosphere at this point that still likes him. Maybe
you
Scott
never say
Lee's the only other guy.
Again. Let's just
no, I'm going to say blogosphere quite a bit. I still think he can be a really good weapon. I think he can be he is a star player. He doesn't necessarily play like the superstar we want him to be, but he is a star player. He has that Q rating. He has that appeal. And he's a really incredible scorer in the right system. I think he was in the right system in Denver and just didn't realize it, and that's why he's struggling. But he had a horrible year. He got his coach fired. He was terrible for 2/3 of the season, and there's no way he should be on any of the teams.
Well, I agree with a lot of that. I don't want to be Mr. Hates Rondo. I just want to say that
you are Mr. Hates Rondo.
You got a Japanese name, doesn't it? Sounds like we're making a business presentation for a client from across the water. Mr. Hates Rondo. We have to learn his customs, otherwise the meeting's going to go terribly.
It sounds Italian to me.
Hates Rondo. Yeah, I think that could be all of those things. But, I've made this argument before. I think when you have a PER around 17 and in that range, and your team's offense isn't that good, I question the third team rating, but I will say this. Rondo has been spectacular in these playoffs, and playoff Rondo definitely deserves to make an All-NBA team, if that was even possible. Third or possibly even second. So if this was playoff Rondo competing for an All-NBA team, I would be fine with the selection. And also, I just think that Wade should probably be first team. People judge these things differently because he missed some games, but just based on efficiency alone and the level of play he had for most of the season, I'd like to see him on first team. It pains me to see maybe one of the top three players in the league on the third team.
Yeah, I think that's legit. I will point out one thing about Blake Griffin that is interesting. He averaged almost 13 or over 12 rebounds a game last year, down to about 10 this year, which is still phenomenal. I mean, you look at his numbers, he's shooting about 55%, giving you 20 and 10. That is really good. In the playoffs, I found it fascinating how hard it was not for him to score. We knew that he would have issues scoring outside the paint when teams really pack it in, but rebounding. Griffin got less than, or 5 or fewer rebounds in more than half of his playoff games. For a power forward playing 35 minutes a night, that is really, really weird. And I guess part of the issue is that he's 6'6.5" and has short arms and is probably going to be more of a 3, you know. But I think it bears watching. Like, why does he have so much trouble why did he have so much trouble rebounding in the postseason?
I think part of that could be the teams he was going against. I mean, the Spurs are, you put him against Boris Diaw, who's a guy who can box out. You know, he's not a great rebounder, but he can box out. And Tim Duncan's obviously still really good on the boards. And then you had him against Memphis. It's possible they game planned to keep him off the boards. I mean, that's what they had done against Kevin Love in the regular season the last 2 years, where you can tell they really put a concerted effort to keep him off the boards. And I think that maybe that's the reason why he struggled. Maybe he just didn't play well, or maybe it was by design. I think you bring up an interesting point of him being a potential 3. We've had the stretch 4. Do we end up having like the power 3 now? Is that going to be a new trend in basketball?
Well, it sounds like something that would happen if there was contraction. We'd have the Power 3 conference that everybody would go crazy for. Yeah, I think that it perhaps could have been that he was playing defense for the first time in his life. I would have to go back to the tape and analyze whether or not that was actually happening, because obviously when you play defense, it can take away from the rebounding, and that's what makes someone like Tim Duncan so special, is that he can pat his head and rub his stomach, basketball-wise, proverbially. I think Griffin's an interesting player, not only because he can become perhaps a power 3, but just because so much of where his career goes is dependent on whether or not that flaw of his shot is immutable. Because it seems like he has a bit of a hitch, and from what I've heard, it's hard to fix that. If he can somehow learn to shoot, and most NBA players learn how to shoot, or at least learn how to shoot better, I mean, it's Hall of Fame career. And if he doesn't, then he's a constant disappointment. So there's just such a range based on whether or not he can improve that, which to me makes him an interesting player.
Yeah, and he definitely did show a lot more commitment to doing a lot of little things defensively, pushing Gasol out of the paint as much as he could, working really hard on an end where he's kind of been a bit of a space cadet. I think he's just going to continue to get better. It's only his second year, but the rebounding, I wonder if that's fixable with all his energy. You know, a guy like Fareed can run around and get boards. It's just hard to believe that Griffin, maybe it was, as you say, Zach, just matchups, but 1 rebound in one of his games and a few 4 rebound games and the 5 rebound. I don't know. It's just, it seems hard to even like fathom. I also wonder how much of that is he was playing more minutes with Reggie Evans. I mean, Reggie Evans is a guy that clears space and is pretty tenacious. I mean, he obviously wasn't playing 40 minutes a game with Reggie out there, but there were quite a few stretches where he had Kenyon Martin out there or Reggie Evans, who were guys that were mixing it up a little bit more. And Ethan's point of him actually playing defense, I mean, he wasn't a good defender, but he was trying. That takes you out of position for rebounds sometimes. Right. Well, and if you're working, if you're smaller and you have to work so hard to push on someone, you're not able to explode and there's way too much green in this segment.
I know how it is. I've played in the NBA, Beckley. You don't have to lecture me on it. I get how to establish paint position in the game.
Ethan was one of the premier power forwards in his day. You don't have to explain to him.
Premier. I was probably at least top 5 Jewish American power forwards in semi-pro basketball
in La Jolla.
At a point in my head. In La Jolla.
All right. Let's get a little bit more on topic. If you're watching at home or in your car on your smart device, which is how I recommend watching this, is as distractingly as possible. Well, what are the kids calling them these days? Anyway,
I'm not going to say blogosphere if you won't say smart device.
We're looking smart device. Your smart device. Sign in, and we're looking for some audience questions here before our first guest. So go ahead and drop them in. I don't know what that question means. Quick one on Blake. Knees go out, doesn't he just become a mark? I would say that not because one, he's more of a rebounder now than Amari ever was, and he can't shoot like Amari.
Yeah.
Amari really developed that money 15 to 18 footer, so he would be in real big trouble if
he's also a much better passer than Amari is.
You stole my point.
He's a pretty good passer
and ball handler. Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
they're just different players.
Can we just have a second to remember how great Amari 1.0 was? I feel like he's almost dismissed now, and people have forgotten how awesome that guy was. He was one of the top 5 players in the league, possibly. So, as long as we're having in memoriams for Allen Iverson's career, just a little shout out for what Amari Stoudemire was.
Well, one thing that Amari could do, and that I think is a sort of an underrated skill that really only like a few players in the NBA can do, is dive down the middle of the lane, catch the pass. Like if it's a good pass, if it's a bad pass, whatever. If he got his hands on you, catch it, and then either one dribble or just a long step and go up and finish. And you think about the big guys with the hands and quickness and touch around the rim to do that. Right now, you might put like Kenneth Faried is getting there. I think Griffin certainly, Derek Favors, and maybe like Josh Smith. I mean, it's just a very, very limited skill set. And when you can put that guy in the middle of the paint, what happens is all those guys, all the defenders have to pinch in, and that opens up all the shooters, which is how Dallas really got all those great open looks, was Tyson Chandler diving, sucked in the defense, and then all of a sudden Jason Kidd has 15 minutes to shoot an open corner 3.
That was a beautiful breakdown, Beckley. I'm just a little speechless as to how to respond to it. I mean, my mind immediately wandered to what sounds dirtier, side pick and roll or pinch in, but that was quite. That was quite.
I don't think that.
I think weak side.
I don't know that that's actually. I don't think that's actually something that happens a whole lot because of defense anymore, though. With so much help defense in such a concentrated sectioning off of the court, that's really become prevalent over the last couple years. That wasn't there necessarily when Amari was in his prime. I don't know that there's that much opportunity to be that guy that dives straight down the middle of the floor and then can finish with a step.
Well,
I just think it's a really. I think maybe you're right that it's difficult. It's more difficult, which you could argue makes the ability to do that even more valuable. Like because you have to be even that split step quicker. You can see, I think that Thaddeus Young kind of has the potential to do that, but he's got so many holes throughout his game. But he's actually kind of a nice little passer on that dump off. And I'm going to just swing this to something that I saw that we're probably going to talk about more with Brett Coromanos when he comes on. Playbook, HoopSpeak, really smart coach. The high pick and roll for Philly was a really effective tool for them to get buckets at the end of last night. And I really have to applaud Doug Collins for making the adjustment that in the fourth quarter, Doug Collins, making the adjustment that allowed Drew Holiday and Andre Iguodala to attack the Celtics big man off the dribble when they weren't able to force to the baseline and then get those kickouts that got him easy buckets down the stretch.
Are you just overjoyed, by the way, or do you feel some sort of fondness for Doug Collins now, Beckley? Because he took your advice. Like, you demanded that he make a change, and he took your... Is he like your boy now? Are you really pulling for old Dougie? Is that what's happening?
No, I think he made that change probably in his mind games earlier, and it just took a while to get it all formalized.
I'm sure Beckley's basically on the staff.
Considering the post came out 3.5 hours before the game, I don't think I was a factor in his decision-making process. Especially because I told him he should sit Evan Turner, and he played him 38, 39 minutes. So I don't think he really cares what I think or who I am.
Here's how I think it went down. You wrote about Drew Holiday's brother, which probably put you on Drew's radar. And so Drew was just following the old Beckley Mason Twitter feed, RSS feed, smartphone feed, whatever the kids are calling it.
Smart device.
smart device, and he sees this article, and he calls Doug Collins over, and he looks it over, and it's like, guys, and they all gather around, and they just come out charged, and they win it for Beckley. I think that's how it went. At least that's how I see it in my head.
It was either that or Drew was napping and playing Xbox. One of those two things happened.
Yeah, Drew probably also not paying too much attention, because I wrote the article you're talking about when I met his brother Justin. I watched him play and kind of was like, hey, this guy, might make it in the draft. And I don't think anyone even looked at him, not even for a second-round pick. He's like a 6'7" shooter, and I was like, he's tall, he was a very good defender in college, he can shoot, he could be a D3 guy.
Tallish. And
the NBA GM's like, no, not even gonna consider it for 1 second.
Oh, you bring up something about the high pick and roll. It seems like that's kind of the new adjustment, where everyone plays the pick and roll so well, and you saw Miami really kind of get Wade and LeBron going by starting it 5 feet farther out than they usually do, and it gave them all that momentum. And I think maybe that's the new adjustment as where offense is going, is how do you stop it when you know that the guy's going to get so much steam going? Because you can, if a guy has a step on you, you can make that up. If he has 2 or 3 steps at this level, it's just not happening.
I also like just where the decision's at about whether or not to have a big guy hedge or to sink. There was a lot of talk, and it was because, in part, Jared Wade's great work on it in the Indiana-Miami series on how Hibbert was sinking, that kind of Andrew Bynum sink on the pick and roll, and that was causing the Heat to kind of take those 3 to 9 foot shots that they might not have been comfortable with. And as far as Bynum, I don't want to make this too much of a digression, but I feel like he sinks not because he's immobile. The thinking is that he's slow. But I think that he's fast enough. I think that he's talked about fearing a little guy crashing into his legs and injuring his knee again. And that's why I think he doesn't like the hedge. If you can put it that way, you can put it out.
S-O-F-T. Soft.
Okay, Larry. Okay, Larry Bird.
I would love it. I would love to hear the audio clip of that if he's like, S-O-F.
God, there's an R in there somewhere.
S-O. Is there a silent H in there?
Soft
Whatever
GH.
they are, I don't like it.
All right, right now we've got a new guest that we haven't had on. First time on the show. One of the most important voices on the Oklahoma City Thunder, which is one of the most important teams in the NBA, from the Oklahoman, Darnell Mayberry. How's it going, Darnell?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Well, let's jump right into it. One of the interesting things, I think, and one of the big topics from this series that's coming up is going to be the coaching matchup, because Pop is one of the most venerated coaches. Scotty Brooks is one of the most questioned coaches. And for you've been around him since he's been a coach. What do you think are some of the peculiarities or particular things about him that fans outside of Oklahoma City might not know?
You mean Scott Brooks?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a laid-back guy. I mean, deep down, he's just a California kid who likes to surf. When you see him on camera, he might be sort of a bland coach and, just kind of throwing out coach speak, but he's just a California kid at heart, and he just loves being a laid-back guy.
Yeah, and I think that it seems like his players have always really responded to him, and he does a great job of getting the emotional investment from his players. And even if the Thunder have trouble in this series, I don't think you're ever going to hear one of his players come out against him or question him in the media.
No, I mean, he's a player's coach, and he gets the most out of his players. Kevin Durant just said yesterday that he was actually joking. He told his coach that he needs to shut up about turnovers, and it's rare that you hear, a coach and a star player have that kind of relationship. I mean, if Dwight Howard and Stan Van Gundy would have told each other to shut up, I mean, it would have made major news because they would have been serious. But Kevin was just joking with him, and I think that's the relationship that Scott Brooks has with all of his guys on this team. That he knows that he can get on them a little bit, but he doesn't really try to ride them too much. He just really tries to encourage them and teach them by positive reinforcement. So I think that's really responded. I think his players have responded well to that, being that they're just young guys, 22, 23-year-old guys who are still learning and growing in this league.
Yeah, and Scott, I think people forget he was a former player for 10 years, and he's also young. How does that impact how he relates to the play? Do you think that they kind of and in the NBA he was like a tough little guard? Do you think that has any impact on how he gets along with his guys?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, these guys all know. I mean, they might not remember his playing career, but they know that he played in the NBA for 10 seasons. They know that he was a point guard, and I think that really resonates with guys like Russell Westbrook and Eric Maynor and Reggie Jackson, and even Derek Fisher. They know that he's been through those battles and he's won an NBA championship. So when he says things, they listen because they know that he knows what it takes to get there.
Yeah. So one of the bigger and really unfortunate news out of Oklahoma City in the last week was what happened in Thunder Alley after after they put away the Lakers. Can you explain that situation and sort of what Thunder Alley was for those who didn't see it and what's going on now?
Well, Thunder Alley, I mean, that's sort of the moniker that they've been using for this thing for a couple seasons now. It's really essentially just a big block party right outside of the arena. It's a street that goes in front of Chesapeake Energy Arena called Reno Avenue, and that block, they just sort of open it up, they close it off, and let fans come in. They have games, they have music, they have food and drinks, face painting for kids, and it's really just an opportunity for all fans of all ages to have a good time and come out and support the team, whether you have a ticket or not. So if you have a ticket, you can go in. If not, you can stay and watch the game outside on this video board that they've installed this year, and that's sort of become a big hit with the Thunder this season. So crowds were growing. It became maybe 6,000, 7,000 people, and the crowds were just getting bigger and bigger. And then unfortunately, about 2 or 3 blocks east of the arena is an area called Bricktown, and that's where the shooting happened. And police reports indicate that it had nothing to do with the Thunder and the Lakers game. It wasn't fan violence or anything like that. It was just an unfortunate incident that unfortunately took place Monday night.
Yeah, and so is Thunder Alley, are they going to continue doing that in the conference finals?
They're going to continue the block party, the pregame festivities that, is the music and the games and the food and the drinks, but they're not going to continue to the live watch party on that big video board outside. They're going to encourage fans to go to another establishment and watch the game there.
Well, I'm sure the other establishments appreciate that business being pushed their way at least, even if it hurts the scene a little. One question I think is going to become a big one for Oklahoma City going forward. James Harden and Russell Westbrook, can you afford to keep them both? Where do you stand on those two players, and do you have a sense of which one seems to you to be the more vital one for the franchise going forward?
You said James Harden and Russell Westbrook. I'm assuming you meaning James Harden and Serge Ibaka?
No, I mean that I think James Harden is going to get a max offer from someone when he becomes available, right. And so is Westbrook, and Westbrook's going to get a big extension, and Durant is obviously around for a long time. It's hard to keep three max guys on the books, especially with Ibaka and et al. The other players that they're going to develop. Where do you see that pushing the franchise going forward?
Well, Westbrook has signed his extension. He signed it earlier this season, so they got him locked in for the next 5-6 years.
I'm saying, you guess you could trade him hypothetically for pieces. Sorry.
Yeah, they're going to keep Russell Westbrook. They love the guy. They love what he brings. I think they consider him one of the elite point guards in this league. And as far as James Harden, I think it's the same thing. They know that he's a dynamic player and he can do things that not a lot of guys in this league can do. I mean, if you look at just sort of rosters throughout the league, James Harden might be the third best shooting guard in the league, right behind Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade. So the fact that he's this good at 22 years old, he's a guy that you can't afford to give up on. I mean, you have to find a way to get him in and locked in long term. And I think they'll do that. I think that they've saved and planned. They saved money and planned for this date for a long time. When they didn't go after big free agents, they were sort of saving. They knew that these guys were all talented and they were going to command a lot of money. So I think at some point we're going to see James Harden sign his contract extension this summer.
Hey Darnell, that's pretty good info on Harden. I'm wondering, is there any chance at all, that they could get all four and get Ibaka in there? Or is that just not really possible under the CBA? It probably won't happen.
I think it's possible. I think Serge Ibaka is really driving up the price with how he's been playing. The fact that he led the league in block shots this season, he led the league in blocks and total blocks last year and blocks per game this year. He's really just proving himself to be an extremely valuable player. First team all defensive player, second in defensive player of the year voting. So he's going to command a lot of money. You saw DeAndre Jordan getting, to upwards of $10 million with the Clippers. So guys like that can rebound, block shots, and basically just dunk the ball, they're going to get money just because they're big men. So I think he's the wild card. But again, they've been planning for this date, and I think they're going to have to be in the luxury tax for a little bit, maybe 2 years with Kendrick Perkins going into the final 2 years of his deals when those extensions come up for Harden and Ibaka, but I think they'll be able to get it done.
So you don't think that Perkins will be amnestied? Is that your view on how it will play out? Because when I look at the roster and the salaries, it just seems that even though Perkins might give them a low post presence and defense that they need, I just don't see how they keep him. So do you think that they'll be able to going forward?
I think it's possible. I think obviously amnesty is a possibility as well, but the fact that they signed him to a relatively inexpensive deal when you look at what big men are getting paid, and people consider him the best low post defender in the league. You have one of the best low post defenders in the league, if not the best, at a relatively a cap friendly contract. So I think they went into that deal knowing that he was going to be able to do a lot of good things for this team and not cost them a lot of money. Amnesty is obviously a possibility, but if they're winning, I mean, that's the key. If they're winning championships and making money, I think that they're going to be able to just sort of bite the bullet and pay all these guys. And it's only going to be 2 years. It's not like it's going to be 5-6 years that they have to go into the luxury tax and then get into that repeater tax stuff. I think if they can manage this for 2 years, they're going to be in good shape.
Obviously, guys can play well together even if they're not friends and even if they're not friendly. I don't think it's a key component. But I'm just wondering, just for my own soap opera curiosity, it seems like Harden and Durant are really tight friends. You see them doing stuff over the summer, and you don't necessarily see Westbrook involved. Are Westbrook and Durant friends? Do you think that they have that kind of connection?
Friends. I mean, you're starting to see it more and more on and off the court. I mean, they pick each other up literally and figuratively on the court. They look out for each other in the locker room and with the media. And I think it's sort of been overblown the last 2 or 3 seasons about that relationship with those two guys. They're good friends. They get along. They don't hang out, in the summers almost. They got together for workouts. Voluntary workouts, but Russell Westbrook didn't play in any of those. He played in one, I think, and that was actually the one that Kevin Durant put on here in Oklahoma City. But he didn't play in those street ball games that everyone was playing in the summer. And it's not just because he's not friends with Durant. He is friends with him. He just didn't play in them.
I'm curious, do you know anything about why he didn't? Because that's an interesting choice with all those other guys, all those other stars getting the attention that summer. Why do you think Westbrook chose to go the more the route of solitude relatively?
I think a couple factors. One, he probably just wanted to first and foremost work on his game and use that time wisely to practice and get up shots in the gym and really work out with some intense workouts out there in LA. He was working out with Derrick Rose, and he has been for the last 3 or 4 years. So I think that was more his focus than anything. And then just trying to get some rest. I don't think he wanted to be out there putting that toll on his body. He's a guy who's played in every game since he's been drafted. So those factors, I think, were much more important to him than going out there and trying to build his brand, which he cares nothing about, and put on a show that doesn't have anything to do with his career.
Well, that's really good info, and thanks so much, Darnell, for coming on the show. I now feel better about the Durant and Westbrook friendship for what that's worth. So thanks so much for thanks so much for coming.
No problem.
Okay, and it seems like we have, or we may have, a certain Brooklyn resident from Austin, Texas, one of my favorite people to argue with a Spurs fandom that definitely humanizes him. He might seem to have a little bit of that hipster veneer. He might seem aloof, but no, this man is a solid Texan and a Spurs fan. Bring Graydon on, man. How you doing?
Good, Ethan. That's quite the introduction. Quite the introduction. I've never liked you, and I never will.
Deserved it. Oh, it hurts. After all the hanging out we did in Austin.
Oh no, that was good. No, I was actually just reminiscing about that last night with some people about the quality South by Southwest times. Yeah, totally.
We did end up on a pink rickshaw. But that's another.
That rickshaw ride was one of the more ridiculous things you and I have ever done together.
That's another story for another.
It was romantic. It was romantic. So.
That's one way of putting it. I guess what I want to talk about is the idea of the Spurs as boring. You had your theory on it, I think, is a good one, and I don't know if I necessarily agree. But I just wonder if you could parse what you mean when you said that everyone accepting them as boring is dogma shaping reality, and there's nothing intrinsically boring about them. I'd just love for you to parse that and explain what you mean.
Sure. So I think that what you have with the Spurs is a team that, truth be told, not a ton of people are watching. They on a national level they don't have great ratings. In Central Texas they have terrific ratings. So what you have is you have holdovers of a lot of the opinions that people had about them in the mid-aughts, in which they were very much a defensive first team. Winning a lot of games. 84-80. Nowadays. That's not the case, right? This is very much an offense-first unit. It's a team that attacks the basket with a lot of vigor. It's a team that shoots a whole lot of three-pointers, which in my opinion is a very fun brand of basketball. I think three-pointers are kind of very energizing and they're momentum-creating. So I think that what you have is you have people kind of remembering a style of basketball and inappropriately applying it to the contemporary iteration of the Spurs. What they're doing is they're letting past perceptions kind of shape their current reality, and I think that that's so. I think that there's ways in which you could call the Spurs boring, but a lot of the ways people tend to talk about it are factually incorrect, I would argue.
So do you think that there's nothing to my theory, and that I'm full of beans on the idea that perhaps people don't really like teamwork in how it's being portrayed and advertised with that great NBA big advertisement that has the Mobb Deep, Shook Ones track in the background where they're passing and setting screens to each other. I just wonder, are people intrinsically attracted to that brand of basketball? And maybe the boredom problem is that they don't play hero ball and they don't have one big star who takes all the shots. Is there anything to that?
I mean, I think there's something to it in the sense that certainly the Spurs are not the most athletic team. People. I love dunks as much as the next guy, and they're not a highlight factory in that regard, and probably never will be as long as this is the group that makes up the team. They're and they don't have a superstar that really rises to the top. Even over the years, the big three have kind of passed back and forth. The kind of leadership role. So I think that in some sense, it being not driven by a single superstar. And even those superstars themselves not being national presences in the same way that maybe a LeBron James or Kobe Bryant is, definitely hurts their likability. However, I also think that people overstate the extent to which people don't like the Spurs. I do think when you go hang out in like bars or whatever and watch games and just kind of listen to fans talk, people, especially during this postseason run, have started to appreciate what they're doing. And there's a lot more positivity about the way they play than there has been for a number of years. I think that people are genuinely starting to rethink the Spurs brand of basketball. So,
well, let me ask you about that, because I feel like the consensus on them is turning, and suddenly, I feel like you just read what Beckley said in the
I did read what Beckley said. Yes, that was what that smile was.
Yes. Well, I feel like the worm has turned, and people are now embracing the Spurs and appreciating, as you said, them for what they are. Now they've gone from should be considered the favorites but aren't, to everybody considering them the favorites. How do you feel about this as somebody who has kind of dealt with your favorite team being ignored and not appreciated? Do you feel happy that everyone is embracing them, or do you feel almost worried that that now they're the favorites in everyone's eyes?
I mean, I mostly feel happy, that people are kind of recognizing the quality of this team and that it's getting the respect that I believe it deserves. I am worried, but I'm not worried because that they'll let everyone else down, or that they'll somehow fall short of national expectations. I'm worried because there is a shelf life on this team, although they seem to kind of rise from the grave again and again and again. Eventually, that will end, and this is truly the best shot they've had to win a title since the last time they won a title. I mean, this is the best they've been playing probably since 2007. So, in some sense, the anxiety doesn't come from kind of the weight of national expectation as much as it comes from the scarcity of opportunities genuinely as good as this.
The Spurs say that they don't care that they're ignored. Like Popovich, I've been in the scary presence of Popovich when he's snorted at this question and dismissed it about the media ignoring them. But I wonder, as a fan and somebody who writes about them, do you care? Do you almost wish that Duncan had been a more open guy and done more interviews and made the Spurs more of a brand and something the nation shares in? Or, like a typical Brooklynite, are you just so happy to love something that's underloved and is also great?
No, I mean, I think I couldn't ask for more from this team, right? I mean, I don't think that I wish Duncan had been any different. I don't see, what more I could ask of the man to do other than what he's done for this organization. So I don't really wish they were more loved. And admittedly, there is some fun in the fact that as a perennially underappreciated team, when they do succeed, there's kind of a bit of throwing that back in people's face. And I have no problem admitting that there's a little bit of fun with that, getting to stick it to people when they again and again and again ignore San Antonio. And then when they achieve, as they perennially do, you get to kind of say, listen, we didn't go anywhere. So in some sense, the fact that they're not, I widely prefer the way they're talked about versus kind of, I don't know, just the blind enthusiasm that people have for the Los Angeles Lakers or the Boston Celtics, or as someone living in New York, the way people talk about the New York Knicks. And I think the unbridled irrational expectations that New Yorkers have for that franchise, no matter who they're putting on the floor. So
yeah. I mean, Spurs fans do seem to be a very logical lot, or at least I'm basing it off Timothy Varner and you and Andrew. I have no idea. I could be stereotyping there. I'm wondering. I'm wondering if you could share a personal story a little bit. Reporters get popped. Popovich cuts into people. I believe you've gotten popped, and I believe that you kind of grew up really looking up to Popovich, and you still do because he's the greatest coach perhaps in the history of the NBA. I'm wondering if you could perhaps tell us the story of getting popped and what that feels like as an emotional experience.
Sure. So I'll keep it. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version so it doesn't run on too long. But it was actually a Minnesota Timberwolves game from a couple of years ago, and the Spurs had lost. The Spurs had lost very narrowly to the Timberwolves, as they do surprisingly often over the last decade. And they had played at a very fast pace. The game had like 103 or something possessions. And I brought that up to Pop and that was back when the T-Wolves were at the very top of the league, right behind the Warriors in possessions per game. And I made that remark to Pop. I said, you played kind of to their pace. Is that, something, did you do that on purpose? Or did you did they control the pace of the game, or were you trying to run with them, or what was the deal there? Because you were playing fast tonight. And he was like, I have no idea how to answer that question. You clearly don't know anything about basketball. We've clearly been playing faster this year. Anybody who has watched the Spurs play for 5 seconds can see that. So I'm just going to go on, and if somebody has a question that's based on fact, I'd love if you could ask it. And this is all on TV, by the way. I mean, he just absolutely tore into me, which, by the way, was also ridiculous because they were playing faster, but it was like 10 possessions faster than they were averaging per game that year. So I was not wrong, but that's Pop. And, so having the man whom you've idolized since, I don't know, my 9th grade, kind of rip into you like that is a special kind of low. But it's also a trial by fire that kind of, I think, any NBA journalist needs to go through. So it's, I don't know, it's definitely, it's sad, but it's also, at the end of the day, truth be told, I know this sounds sappy, but I just feel so lucky to have gotten to speak with the man that, I don't know, it didn't bum me out that much because I think so highly of Bob. So, hello, Zach.
Graydon, I've got a quick audience question. Hello, I'm really awaiting your arrival in Minneapolis, I believe, next month. I just can't wait.
Yeah.
We have a question from Supman.
Oh my gosh.
Who do you think will win the NBA playoffs?
Okay.
I'm a Heat fan all the way, and that part of that's in caps. I don't know if you can see that.
I can see that. Well, Supman, I'm inclined to say that the Heat won't win the NBA Finals if Chris Bosh doesn't make it back and isn't at 100%. Truth be told, I think that the winner of the West is going to win it all. So I think that, I think that it'll probably be, and truth be told, I think the Spurs are going to take this series. I have the Spurs in 6. So right now I do like the Spurs to win it all, but not so overwhelmingly that you couldn't see it going a couple of other ways. They're not going to cruise to a title as they've cruised through the first 2 rounds. Everything's going to get much harder from here. So,
you touched on it a little bit. I'd like you to touch on it a little bit more. Maybe even caress it. I feel I have a really hard line stance that Spurs fans don't want attention at all. They don't. Like they love being the fan base that is overlooked. They complain about, we don't get coverage on ESPN for 15 straight wins or 27 out of 29 wins or 4 titles or whatever. But there is no way that they actually want that, because it is better to say, I knew more than the experts, I knew more than ESPN, I knew more than Yahoo. Am I off base here?
No, there's something delicious about being right and kind of there, and it's kind of the best of both worlds because you can kind of feign being the underdog when in fact you never truly are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, the Spurs are the best run organization in basketball and have been for a very long time, but you can somehow act like, despite that fact, you were picked on and you were ignored and you were abused in the media, which is obviously, there's a fair amount of BS given, yes, they don't get the attention that some of the other marquee franchises do, but nobody has ever said a bad word about Tim Duncan. Nobody ever says a bad word about Greg Popovich. Yes, they don't maybe talk about them as often, but the media tends to think very highly of them. So in general, yeah, it's kind of a having your cake and eat it too kind of thing with Spurs fans. But, we'll take what we can get.
That's a perfect segue, actually, because speaking of cake, how important has it been to take DeJuan Blair off the floor and put Boris Diaw into the lineup? Because Boris has been really, really good for them. And it's it seems like bringing in a veteran who knows what he's doing over a guy who can't play any defense and really doesn't know what to do has been huge for them.
Yes, that's the thing. Is Boris Diaw is much better at basketball than DeJuan Blair. I mean, I think that they have, on the defensive end, neither of them are that athletic. They're both kind of glued to the floor. However, Boris is in position much better. He in a defensive system that's very much based on positioning and not athleticism. He's always in the right spot. Which is key. He's also very quick with his hands. They're both quick with their hands and are surprisingly good at getting steals in the down low, but Boris just kind of does everything more elegantly than DeJuan does. And on the offensive end, Boris and his passing ability just adds a whole nother level to the Spurs offense.
Yeah.
His ability to pass out of the high post or down in the low block where he gets the ball is just amazing, and it creates opportunities that no one else on the floor is anticipating. On top of that, Boris is actually a very good finisher at the rim as well. And DeJuan can score a lot of points, but he kind of he's a bit wild around the rim. There seems to be no correlation between the toughness of his shot and the likelihood of it going in. Where Boris can really finish solidly. There's a lot of times where I wish Boris wouldn't pass the ball and would just go up with it. Truth be told, so I mean, I love that.
I'm gonna hijack this for just a second because we were in a bar in New York one fateful night in October, I believe, and Jared Wade threw some really horrible things out about one of my favorite movies, Summer Catch, and you defended it with me. You said it really was a pretty decent movie. I would like you to talk about that just a little bit.
I don't remember any of that.
Are you serious? What do you mean you don't remember that?
I'm not sure I've ever even seen Summer Catch. Are you sure that wasn't making fun of you?
Oh my god. Oh my god. It's possible you were making fun of me, but I really remember you coming to my rescue here.
That's the one that's based off of the Nick Hornby book, right? But it's about the socks, or which is that? No, it's the one with Ben Affleck?
I think you're thinking of Fever Pitch. No, this is with Freddie Prinze Jr.
I'm thinking of Fever Pitch. Yeah. No, that's what it's. This one yeah, I remember Summer Catch. I don't know if I ever saw that.
You've let me down. Don't even answer it. You've let me down. God, you've completely let me down.
I'm not saying that at the time I didn't say that.
Just let him drown.
Your lonely opinion on Summer Catch. Just let it wither.
I'm not saying at the time I didn't come into your aid. I'm just saying it was wholly disingenuous if I did.
So it's been like our whole friendship.
Yeah.
Just embodied into one moment.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I also don't remember that at all, but it's possible. I think I remember that bar, but I remember that moment.
It depends on how much Graydon had been drinking. If he was also talking about how Puerto Rican he is,
I feel like it was early.
He probably doesn't remember anything about talking about Summer Catch, because that's basically the index of how much Graydon has had at the bar.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I haven't had anything to drink today, so I'm probably not going to comment on that, So.
All right, I have an actual Spurs question for you, Graydon. Watch out. So you're talking about how nice it is to be the Spurs, have this great team, and everyone kind of comes around on it. I was talking to Kevin Arnovitz, and he made a really good point that last year was sort of like this event for Dirk Nowitzki, where we had him up, and everyone got to get all this praise out for Dirk that we'd been saving up for all these years of underrating him. And that's what sort of seems to be happening for the Spurs kind of in the national media, is now it's like we're having this ceremony for them, and just everyone's kind of finally embracing the totality of them. Do you get the sense that people in San Antonio are responding to that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think there's I think that, kind of in general, the Spurs organization is kind of getting its day in the sun. I also think that Duncan's kind of getting...
we're having you on, for instance.
Yeah, right. So I'm here, right? And then people, brought me out of my cave to talk about this. So clearly it's a big day. And And, you know, Duncan is kind of getting the Dirk treatment. Duncan didn't need the Dirk treatment as badly as Dirk did, as he had already won several titles and been a 2-time MVP, so he had gotten his day in the sun. However, it's been a few years since people were really probably giving him the credit he was due, and he's definitely kind of getting that in the winter of his career. He's getting that praise again, and I think that. So yeah, I mean, and I think people appreciate that. I think people, you know, are happy that they're finally getting this. I think most of all, they're just happy that they're winning. So you know, it's right. Nice to win 18 games in a row. So
it is. Yeah, I was 25 when the Spurs last lost, and I'm now 34.
Right.
Now you can start.
Ginobili. Yeah. Speaking of being 34, Manu Ginobili didn't play in a couple of games for the Spurs this season. When they beat the Thunder, he didn't play in any of them. They went 2-1 against the Thunder.
Yeah, any of them. Yeah.
When he's out there, how different are they when he's on the court? And do you think that he is going to be a real problem for the Thunder?
I think he is going to be a problem. I mean, I think he tends to be a problem for everyone, even when he's not scoring a ton like he did in the last series. You know, he does a lot of things very well. He's causes some havoc on the defensive end. He's one of the team's best passers. It's a big underrated part of his game, especially in the pick and roll. He finds guys and he makes the pick and roll game far more effective as far as guys actually rolling towards the basket. So I think that those are things that are going to be important for him. And you know, truth be told, if on top of all that he can get his own scoring game going again, you know, you could see the Spurs playing at an even slightly higher level than they've been playing at already, which is scary because he's been the one guy who probably hasn't been playing at his highest level consistently. So I think that you know, so I think he will cause a lot of problems. You know, the Spurs actually played very well against the Thunder this year without him. They played very well against the Thunder the last several seasons, which is a little...
Why do they play so well against them?
I think that they do a good job kind of coaxing kind of Westbrook's demons to take over a little bit. I think they do a good job making him into the team's first option and kind of keeping, you know, denying Durant the ball. You know, even though the Thunder have a big front court, they don't have a score-first front court, which is something that the Spurs struggle with more, but they don't struggle as much with wing scorers. I also just think that, truth be told, the Spurs get the shots they want, especially the outside shots. The Spurs move the ball well enough to get the three-point shots they want against the Thunder, and if the Spurs are getting those outside looks, you know, they're cruising most of the time. So.
Yeah, and that's what I would worry about as a Thunder fan after Dallas beat them in 5 games by basically doing those two things, right? Getting great ball movement around the perimeter and forcing Russell Westbrook to make a gajillion, you know, 9 to 16 footers. That's going to be the game plan for the Spurs. I wonder how they're going to defend Durant, though. Kawhi Leonard, I guess, is going to be the primary defender on him. Or who do you think is going to get him?
No, I think Kawhi. That's absolutely right. Kawhi is going to draw that matchup most of the time. You know, if in other instances it could be Manu or maybe Steven Jackson, depending on how deep Pop wants to go or how he's mixing up the rotation. But I think Leonard's getting that most of the time, and I think there, you know, really it has to be about denying him the ball. You know, once Durant's got it in his hands. Just how high his release is, how high his lift is. I mean, he can get off a shot he wants because he can get off a jump shot. So I think that it's about making that initial pass to him difficult, which is something that Kawhi is going to have to be dogged about. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think that if you know,
you think Danny Green on Westbrook?
I think Danny Green on Westbrook most of the time. I also think you'll see Tony on Westbrook some. You might see Danny out there. Covering Harden a little bit if the Thunder's big three are on the floor, because Danny is kind of the more aggressive of the two defenders, and I think that you might see Danny kind of trying to mess with Harden a little bit more and having Tony on Westbrook, which, truth be told, Tony's a slightly underrated defender, has played good defense this year, and does a decent job against Westbrook, as decent as anyone does against such an athletic guy. So I think that they've got a few guys they can throw at him, but it'll mostly be Danny and Tony.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. You know, the Spurs are going to need big games out of like guys 6, 7, and 8 on the roster every once in a while. They've gotten them all year. It's Western Conference Finals. It's kind of interesting to see. I think that's one of the reasons people look at the Spurs with a little hesitancy is as you get in the bigger and bigger moments, we're just not used to seeing teams rely on guys like Gary Neal and Danny Green and even Matt Bonner to make big shots for them in the Western Conference Finals.
Right. But that's going to be this team, right? They're not going to switch it up now. They're not going to suddenly seize up and just put the ball in Tony or Manu's hands and ask him to create. I mean, they're going to keep moving the ball, keep executing the system, keep asking the role players to hit big shots in big moments, and it'll be up to them to deliver. So, yeah, if the Spurs win a title, it'll be because guys 6, 7, and 8 are averaging 9 to 10 points a game still, and as they have been this postseason. So, and I think that's very doable, but those are young guys, and it'll be up to guys like Kawhi and Danny and Bonner to keep hitting big shots. So, which I believe they can do, but you know, the pressure only gets ratcheted up from here. So we'll see what those guys are made of. So.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, and I'm sure we'll have more opportunity in the future to talk about how great your Spurs are, and I'm looking forward to moving up to New York. I'll see you all the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're going to be a Brooklyn guy yourself. You're going to have to start listening to, you know, I don't know, some band that
I'm going to get my Warby Parker.
Some band we haven't even heard of.
Yeah, you're going to be like listening to the Dirty Projectors.
I'm just going to start making up bands.
You know, and like, you know, yeah, drinking PBRs and, you know, using Instagram a lot. It's going to be
Union
great.
Hall bocce.
Yeah, exactly. Playing bocce ball in bars. Just, you know, riding a single-speed bike. It's going to be sweet, Bex. So
I can't wait. All right, man. I'll catch you later.
All right. Cheers, fellas.
All right, well, let's talk quickly about the game tonight. Heat Pacers. Really, kind of the fascinating thing to me about this game is that the Heat have lost their best, or maybe not their best. You can make an argument for Joel Anthony, but offensively, certainly their best big men, and you know, 2 of their 3 best rebounders. They say in the NBA, when you lose the starter, it's not the backup who's the problem, it's the backup's backup. Well, they've lost the backup. So now what does that mean? We're going to see the backup's backup? Is this Juwan Howard time? This could get, like, weird with some of the rosters.
I just got excited.
You see a lot of Mike Miller at the 4. Like, I'm really curious to see how Spoelstra handles his rotations.
I just like the idea of somebody saying in all seriousness, "We've lost the backup's backup." You know, like I want somebody adhering to that adage. I don't know what we'll see. I think what's interesting is
Juwan Howard out with the gout.
Yeah, out with the gout. Out with the old.
Osteoporosis.
What's funny is that people are saying that, oh, Pat Riley loves what Haslam did, but it really screws the Heat in Game 6. And I just wonder if he would do it again. And even if it's not worth it if you do it again, it seems like it's done out of some sort of sense of man code and not logic. And the sort of sports idea of protecting your guys. But it's just not logical. I get why it was done, but I just wonder why the Heat would endorse it and would want it to happen, and if that's just some stupid holdover for another era, or maybe I just don't get it because I didn't play the game and I fear confrontation and physical contact with others.
I think.
What do you guys think?
I think that I think we're just going to see the Heat go really small, and we're going to see a lot more LeBron at the 4, and you could worry that it's going to wear him out, but this is a Pacers team that probably doesn't have Danny Granger, and if he does play, he's going to be really hurt and not capable of doing good Danny Granger things, which he was doing in small spurts the last couple of games. And I think that is the reason why it doesn't really matter. If they can go small and don't have to worry about Danny Granger on the perimeter, if you're just worrying about beating George Hill and Paul George on the perimeter, I think you're okay. And not that those guys aren't good role players, but it's not anything that you have to worry about. So if you can pack the paint and the Pacers don't get wide open threes all night, I don't really see that it's a problem because Battier, for whatever reason, has done a decent job on David West. This could just be a product of them not going to West enough, and maybe because Granger's hurt now, they do go to West a lot more. But whatever it is, they go to the post in the first quarter and then abandon it the rest of the game. And if that's the case, then it doesn't really matter that Haslam's out.
Right. Well, and the other big issue is that if Granger is the primary LeBron defender, and if he can't guard LeBron, that means that probably Paul George has to move up to guarding him, which means that you either have George Hill, Leandro Barbosa, or Dante Jones guarding Wade. Now, you can give Dante Jones a bunch of minutes, fine, if you want to. But they're going to need scoring on the court because they already can't score. I mean, they're already really struggling to score. Yeah. Leandro Barbosa is like a negative 58 plus minus for the series. George Hill overmatched against Wade in the post. So it's interesting that we think of the Pacers as this big team, but tonight, with this one piece, if Granger can't be effective and they have to shuffle that rotation, they're going to look very small on the perimeter, and Miami is just going to bludgeon them and get in the middle and maybe take advantage of Hibbert, get him in foul trouble early. Hibbert's going to have a big game if Danny Granger isn't able to move with LeBron at all.
Yeah, and I love that you made that point because I feel like because of Hibbert, there's this trope out there that, the Pacers are huge, that front court. Trope, dream.
We gotta get Ethan on exemplum more than trope. You gotta transition to exemplum. This is a postseason.
Well, but there is, get back from that and my silly phraseology. There's a lot of talk of just this awesome Indiana front court, and in truth, it's Hibbert and David West, and David West is a slightly above average player, not really. We don't have the term oversized for somebody who's big. We have the term undersized. He's not an oversized four, so I just think that's a bit false. And also, if Granger gets hurt,
I was just gonna say he's kind of built like Big Mama, like the Martin Lawrence character. He's kind of built like Big Mama.
Is that something that crossed your mind as you were watching Summer Catch for the 5th time in a row? Is that just
I haven't watched it in a month.
He does have a brick-like build. He's like a large fullback. Yeah. But I just wonder.
I think the other problem with him. Sorry, go ahead, Ethan.
No. I want to hear it.
Well, David West hasn't played a very smart series. I mean, he's not like a Chris Bosh guy who can make a bunch of different reads with the ball, and you can play through him out of the high post or something. Even Hibbert, who is functional and good at moving the ball like that, has just no, he's not a playmaker. And I think that's what's really hurt them is that they want West to just be a finisher, but as soon as he gets it in good position, the Heat double him and give him a lot of trouble. Where he's really effective is with a really strong point guard who can get him just open 16-footers, which he'll make all day, and occasionally he'll get to his jump hook if he can get position off a second move. But you can't just throw it into West and expect him to be able to pass out and kill the Heat with as well as the Heat rotate and as fast as they are.
I think you can. I think you can get him on quick action coming across the lane. Some cross screens.
But not just being fronted. That's what. That's where
you have to have
the first look.
That's where you have to have some
That's where not being
though.
Oversized really hurts you. When you're being fronted, it's an issue.
Well, and also not athletic, right? You can't just throw it up to West and he'll go get it. He and Battier probably jump the same height. And so when they throw it up there, like LeBron or Wade is just going to go get it.
It was funny to see in the first few games LeBron front West a few times, and just it's like you're not throwing that. That's just that's just a pass to LeBron. That's not really happening. and that takes us to something else where the defense can really shift over, and I've written about it. But other people are saying they should just give it to Hibbert. Why aren't they giving it to Hibbert? It's because it's really hard, and if Granger gets hurt again and they have one less floor spacer, it should be even harder to get the ball to Hibbert because the Heat will be even more comfortable in shifting help over there and fronting and swarming him. So it's not so easy. It's not just as easy as giving it to Hibbert and having him just go. Bloop.
I think it can be, though. It's just that Vogel's not a very good offensive coach. Like, there's not a lot of motion. There's not a lot of movement. It's very basic. And if you throw a couple wrinkles in there, even if it's for a quarter, if it takes a quarter for Miami to figure it out, that's a quarter you can probably win just by using cross-action, using a high-low game. I mean, Hibbert's a good passer. I think there's stuff you can do. It's just Vogel's not very imaginative. He doesn't make in-game adjustments at all.
Well, and Spoelstra is an excellent defensive coach, so it's while they're both, I think, kind of similar level of coaches, I think Spoelstra is a much better defensive coach than Vogel is an offensive coach.
I'm going to disagree with you there, just because all I've heard for the last 2 years is that Spoelstra is just has the best athletes on his team, so that's why they're good at defense, and there's not actually a system or anything. This is just what Bulls fans and Lakers fans and Celtics fans have let me know. And it's stuff I wasn't aware of, but it turns out it's true. There's just not – he just doesn't coach anything.
Man.
Yeah.
Someone trolled you, and you just retweeted that troll onto me, and I didn't see the RT, and it just was totally throwing me off for a second.
You just saw the quotation marks?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, Ethan, you got one last point on this before we have to sign off?
I'm pretty satisfied with everything you guys are saying about the series. I don't know if I necessarily could rank Spoelstra versus Vogel in any particular order, but I am interested to see what Spoelstra does with the Miami Heat defense and whether or not it's more gamble-oriented and more high-risk, high-reward as the playoffs go further. It's something that I want to track because he had some curious defensive schemes, and especially in some blowouts that the Heat endured against the Celtics. And I'm just wondering if that was experimentation, or if it's just how things are and it can come back to haunt them. I'm not being particularly cogent. I just tried to formulate something because you asked. I'm just going to get off this point, and we can move.
Well, one thing I know you want to talk about is the Spurs and Sixers. Can we all agree that the Spurs are secretly kind of awesome when they let Drew Holiday attack from the top?
Yes. No, I completely agree with that. And I had this fantasy that Drew Holiday is two times better.
I wish you had just cut off there. I had this fantasy that Drew Holiday was too.
That he's looking at me with those large, deep-set eyes and just peering into my soul.
Feeding me grapes.
Nah. All kinds of muscat grapes, which are delicious this time of year. But that's not really on topic at all. No, I just always wonder if he's constrained by the very conservative Doug Collins system, and perhaps if it was a little looser, he'd be a much better player. Because it seems sometimes when plays break down or in transition, he is splendid. He just looks fluid and amazing, and when he's trying to run a motion offense, it's not necessarily working as well.
Yeah, I think that he's a similar player to Jeff Teague in that they're basically impossible to stay in front of off the dribble, and I'm going to co-opt a point from Brett Coromanos here. Basically impossible to stay in front of, but they play for teams that purposefully don't give them space. You look at basically only Rose can just go to the basket whenever he wants, regardless of who's standing in the paint on his own team. But if you gave them space, like let's say Jameer Nelson would get typically in his offense, both those guys, I think, would be just devastating to defend.
Big Holiday fans over here. Big Holiday.
I don't think he's that good. I honestly don't. I don't.
Party.
He's not a good defender. You put any kind of... He can stop the first move almost every time. Let me finish my point. He can stop the first move. Let me finish my point. He can stop the first move every time. You throw a second move on him, any kind of counter move, and he's lost. He has no idea where to go. It's like he loses where the help defense is. He has no way of staying in front of a guy. And that's not just the rules. That's him not being able to deal with a crossover to a spin or a crossover to an in-and-out crossover. Something, there's something every second move he just seems baffled by.
Okay, but he's one of the few point guards who can stay in front of opposing point guards, and I feel like he has the best lateral mobility.
When?
Point guard. That has to count for something. That has to count for something. He is so quick going side to side.
All right,
he's not quick enough mentally, defensively.
We're gonna take the. I actually happen to agree. I think his mind wanders a little bit. We're gonna take this last question.
I think we're kind of in agreement.
And then we're just gonna bounce abruptly. It's an interesting one to me. How does Philadelphia improve from this season? Are they Hawks light? Which I guess would imply that their ceiling is
that they're not trustworthy.
Low. I think they go back in time and they draft Derek Favors, and then they have a big defender and someone who can slash down the middle on pick and rolls. And I think that then they're in great shape.
They're still not going to be able to beat the Hawks when they go back in time and select Chris Paul. So I don't know how where that gets them. they still can't compete in the East.
True, but the Hawks went back, selected Chris Paul, and then already traded him to the Lakers.
Hey, you got to
you know where Philly goes with this. You know where Philly goes with this? Blow it up. You're treading water, and I don't know that unless one of their guys can take a big leap. What are they? Like, they're a 6th seed, they're a 5th seed tops, and where do they go from there? They don't have anything to build off of. They need either Drew Holiday to get great, or they need Evan Turner to become really good, or they need Spencer Hawes to do something other than piss me off every night. I mean, they need something. Man. They need someone to make a huge leap. Maybe Evan Turner can do that.
Off the books. They're going to have money to pay people.
Evan Turner.
I mean, as much as we want to pretend the NBA is a little league. As a little league team, like, you have to have a star. You have to have a focus. You can't. Andre Iguodala can't be your best player, and you end up being like a contender.
Like, one point about Evan Turner, if you just blurred out the backboard and the rim, like one of those hats in like an early '90s rap video, and you just didn't see the result, you would think Evan Turner was amazing. He just moved so gracefully and with such power. It's just the ball never goes in the basket, and he would fool you if
his shot is so broke.
He would be the best, like, if he was the toy cop, if he was Shep from above the rim playing ball without a ball. His moves are incredible. You just don't want to see him use an actual basketball.
What?
All right. Well, and with that point that made a ton of sense, we're going to leave you. We're not going to dagger smash or note today.
I had Graydon stories.
Oh, you have a Graydon story? All right, tell your Graydon story. Oh, is it about when you beat Graydon? Oh, we should have brought up the basketball. Ah, we missed such a good opportunity.
Bring Graydon back on. Bring him back on.
We missed the opportunity. Oh, God, about the time that Henry, Abbott, and I pounded, just crushed Graydon and Rob Mahoney in a little game of outdoor 2-on-2. That's something that, for the sake of posterity, should be noted. It should be remembered. So I'm glad that we.
You're hitting daggers. I heard.
Yeah, a lot of daggers, a lot of smashes.
You should hear. So I bring this up to Graydon all the time to give him crap about it, because Rob is a very good player, and if he's playing with Rob, he should not lose that. Wait, are you actually bringing Graydon back? Yes.
Yes.
Is he there?
Episode 50 madness.
Graydon, are you there?
Neither here nor see.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you what he said before.
It's like the game. It's just like he showed up and he didn't show up. Just like the game.
Was very slippery, and you were playing harder than everyone else, and he wasn't willing to move enough to defend you, so you were like slipping and sliding all over the place, but you're also getting the basket. That's his excuse for you kicking his butt.
And what an excuse it is. How convoluted. Ethan was playing too hard. What kind of excuse is that? That's just... it is ridiculous. You just have to own that loss. You have to wear it.
This is preposterous. This is preposterous. This is preposterous. First of all, there's on a number of levels. First of all, we were all hungover like there was no tomorrow, and we had all ate a ton of Mexican food. A ton of Mexican. Well, I was hungover, and then we just eaten a ton of Mexican food. So by no means was I at my peak, my athletic peak. Second of all, yeah, it had been raining all morning, and you were the only person who was willing to just bust ass because you wanted to attack the basket, and you would just go crashing to the floor every play, and no one else wanted to run because every time you would just go spilling out. But then you'd get an open layup, but you'd also like break an ankle, like to get it.
So your argument is that I had more heart. That I had more heart than you had. Is that the argument here?
I like how you're not bringing up anything about the previous day's game where we actually like ran on an actual court, and I like had like 12 steals. So thank you.
Well, I don't remember that.
Steals is the most not really that good thing to ever tout in a pickup game.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
I had so many good questions. Didn't you see that?
I wanted to talk about
I made all my free throws.
Trey Kirby remembers.
I was getting so many offensive rebounds, guys. You don't even know.
Listen, I fill gaps, right? It's like, how can I make myself most useful? You know, I'm out
except
there.
After it rains, apparently. Then that just stops. Yeah. Then there's like no more gaps.
What do you think? Rob and I were like, let's play a shooting contest instead.
I don't remember that being talked about at all. I want this rematch, and I want it badly.
Oh, I will. I would love.
You heard it here first.
Rob Mahoney and I will absolutely kick Urian Henry's ass on a good day. I will bring it.
Love to see it.
Bring it.
Love to see it. Love to see it.
Absolutely.
I just want to quickly talk about our rickshaw adventure because I've never felt like a worse person than when you demanded that this rickshaw driver take us a long distance at a bar to meet up with.
Demanded? That's
my God, you're a monster.
No, it's his job to be demanded. I was like, we got in, and I was like, this is where we're going. Okay. Like, what do you mean?
Did you throw change at him?
Did he try to kick you out?
Well, then here's what happens. Here's what happens. Graydon was mad that the guy was so slow, and he was making sneering little comments as the rickshaw driver zoomed past us. Like, oh, we should have gone with him. That guy, that's a rickshaw driver.
I did feel terrible because our guy was dying up there. Then when I actually took a look at him, that poor guy was dying. I felt really bad.
And then at the end of the journey, he was going uphill for a long distance, and we just noticed that our dude, our rickshaw driver, was just drenched. Just totally shirt-soaked and panting, and I have never felt more privileged, colonialist, and awful.
We asked him to stop.
So much human labor.
So we could just walk.
Yeah.
I know. I never felt like more like an imperialist like in my life.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
I felt. I genuinely felt bad after I was. Well, you know, I was admittedly in like New York City cab mode, or if the cab isn't being aggressive enough, I start getting like short with him.
Except the cab is running.
Except for the cab is a human being as the engine, and in Texas.
You were yelling at him because the Jimmy Kimmel video wasn't playing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, what is this? What's this TV in here for, anyways? No, so.
I need a map.
Yeah.
I just love the, well, it looks like we picked the wrong rickshaw. And the guy's panting and like running and we're on his back.
That guy, okay, but at the time we had only got a couple of blocks, and that other dude blew past us, and he had like
I know he
playing.
did.
He had,
he was playing like rap music.
Yeah,
and
that was
just
the
like
better
he's
rickshaw.
gliding along. I think it was our guy's
denied
first
that
day.
was the superior rickshaw. That the other rickshaw was the superior.
You know, it was. It was clearly the better rickshaw. And I think we should go out on that. I
don't need to heckle him.
Yeah, just give him a really bad tip.
I think I in the end, I actually think I gave him an incredibly good tip because I felt so terrible.
Guilt tip.
Yeah, I gave him
we were both just like, sorry,
tip.
buddy.
We gave him like twice the
Maybe
amount
that's the
he
play
paid.
if you're a rickshaw driver is to not go at top speed and to make it look like you are just having the worst 15 minutes of your life.
Yeah.
And
he
just
probably
trying to
had
get
some
that
water
extra good
balloons
tip.
under his shirt, and he was just popping them the whole time as he was running. He was just popping them to inspire
you guys got hustled.
Oh, God. Now I feel like such an idiot. Well,
You just now feel
well, and after 80 minutes, so ends the 50th episode of HoopSpeak Live. Graydon, thank you for being our guest twice. This makes up for the time when we had the lost episode where you came on and then we lost it, and you.
I think I offended him too.
Hilarious thing. So we got 2 of them here.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I mean, anytime, guys. Always happy. Plus, I gotta defend my honor if Ethan's gonna start talking trash, making up tales, about, like fudging the facts. I gotta, defend my honor.
No facts are fudged. That's just what happens.
So many fudged facts. So, yeah.
All right, you two. Let's take it offline. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Darnell, Mayberry, and the ghost of Brett Cormano. See you guys later.